Your business update now. The head of ASEAN has hailed the signing of the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, or RCEP, as a momentous event. ASEAN Secretary General Lim Jock Hoi says the deal would bring a much-needed boost to businesses recovering from the economic crisis caused by COVID-19. Once ratified, RCEP will cover 30% of global GDP, becoming the world's largest free trade agreement. The signatories are the 10 ASEAN nations, as well as China, Japan, South Korea, Australia and New Zealand. RCEP aims to eliminate tariffs, counter protectionism, and allow free movement of goods in the region. And for a closer look at the significance of RCEP is Dr. Amitendu Palit from the National University of Singapore. Thanks for joining us, Doc. Well, this FTA aims to improve market access between countries. But what does it mean for businesses as well as consumers like you and I?
I think there are two things that we should note about this FTA. The first is that this has been under negotiation for almost a decade now. And we have seen it go through several hurdles. There have been very difficult circumstances, the least and the latest of which was the COVID-19 pandemic. But I think it's, in a sense, a testimony to the negotiating countries that they stuck to their guns and finished it at a time when it was decided to be finished, in the hope that this is going to significantly bring down the existing barriers on movement of goods across borders, which essentially means that for a region like Southeast Asia and the Asia Pacific, where a large number of livelihoods are now being pushed back as a result of the outbreak of the pandemic, new opportunities can come up, enabling the supply chains and the value chains to function in a far more unhindered fashion, enabling a large number of people to appreciate and go out and absorb themselves in the new opportunities surrounding trade. And in very short and simple terms, both for consumers as well as producers, give large number of new opportunities, enabling consumers to buy more goods at affordable prices and producers to actually engage in a new level of rising demand created by trade from each other, which would definitely boost their output.
So that means that, our choices, consumers will have greater choices and greater options. But then how significant is this deal for Singapore? Because we already have FTAs with each of these 14 countries. So with RCEP, can we expect more investments and more jobs?
Let me put it to you this way. You're absolutely right in saying about the number of agreements that Singapore right away has with the participating nations. But I think this agreement means a little more in the sense that if, say, for example, Singapore has a free trade agreement with the remaining ASEAN members, what it now gets through the RCEP is that much more additional liberty to exchange in trade with the same countries with which it has an agreement, but perhaps with whom it is not trading with as much liberty surrounding the movement of goods as possible. And number two, these agreements which Singapore has with its neighbors were probably executed some years ago. Conditions have changed. The world has got more digitalized. There are a number of new elements that have come into the spectre of trade. So what the RCEP brings on the table are more liberal, more modern, more contemporary rules of trade, which will enable Singapore to trade with its existing partners in a more effective fashion.
Refresh terms. Now, the deal obviously still needs to be ratified, and that could take months or even years. So what do you think things could look like in the short and long term?
I think I'm reasonably optimistic about the prospects of the deal getting off to a quick start, because it will require a minimum number of countries to come together and get them ratified within their domestic parliaments. The ratification processes are different for different countries individually, but I think if all the countries have been able to come together this far and conclude on the deal, then they must have already discussed among themselves individually and within their internal systems as to how quickly and how effectively they will be able to ratify the deal. So I think I would give this deal a period of 1 year from today. And I think by that time, we can expect to see this deal get off the block.
All right, thanks so much, Dr. Amitendu Palit. He's a Senior Research Fellow at the National University of Singapore.